The gravity of the time is such that every new avenue of peace, no matter how dimly discernible, should be explored. Never before in history has so much hope for so many people been gathered together in a single organization. You will provide a great share of the wisdom, of the courage, and the faith which can bring to this world lasting peace for all nations and happiness and well-being for all men.
When this episode was recorded, Barakah Unit 2 was not yet operational, as is mentioned in the episode. It has since been declared commercially operational. Enjoy the show.
So we are here today on Titans of Nuclear with His Excellency Mohamed Al Hammadi, who's the CEO of the Emirates Nuclear Energy Corporation. Welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get into some of the amazing accomplishments that we've seen in your country, and I mean, for the nuclear world, this is the best, right? Getting all these reactors up and running. But before we get to that, we'd love to just learn a little bit about you as an individual. Maybe you could tell us, where you were born and how you got interested in the sector.
I was born in Abu Dhabi, and I did my schooling of University in Florida. I did my bachelor electrical engineering at the same school. I did also a master in engineering management, and from there I got. I started working in the utility sector for over now 20 years, and mainly on projects of utility projects.
And if I may, why engineering out of all the disciplines in the world?
Specifically electrical engineering. I actually, when I was a young kid, I broke my father's radio, and that's where I could not fix it, and that was one of the reasons I got to study. And I remember I did my own first rain detector in Abu Dhabi. That doesn't rain much here. It was a nice toy to play with my little nephews. And I remember I've taken that device all the way to university level, to an electronics lab, to discover it, understand the math and science behind it. And from there, I enjoyed the engineering sector. Then I was almost about to graduate. I came for internship here back home, and worked in the oil and gas sector for over summertime. Then I discovered I would do something than operation and maintenance of oil and gas facilities. I would rather go and do something on projects, more on the engineering side. And that's where I did my master's degree in engineering management, which is half engineering, half management of technological projects. Don't ask me, do I expect it to land and run a nuclear project? No, that was not my...
Well, tell me about some of those, that early experience, that exposure to the utility sector. And what were some of the early jobs that you had, some of the early challenges that you had to overcome?
Yeah, actually, I was lucky. When I joined, the electricity sector here in Abu Dhabi was completely restructured. So that was 1998. I joined them in 1999, where the whole sector was restructured. So the clarity of roles and responsibilities on the generation, the transmission, distribution, and that was the early part of it. So having a master's degree helped me understanding the strategic reasons behind it and economics and all that. So I was able to engage, but I was not satisfied. Actually, I wanted to be an engineer. So I went to the field. I used to do, cable jointing. I used to work in commissioning of substations and.
Okay, so real physical work, not just engineering, but like you're in the field actually doing the applied engineering.
Yep. And actually, I enjoyed that because to be able to understand the challenges of the operation and maintenance and the fields of the projects, it gives you an edge. It gives you an understanding. When you ask somebody to do a project or contractor, at least you can know what specifics on what they will do and what's the challenges and what are difficult and what's easy to do. So you cannot move, bring a 50-ton crane to move a needle around. Theoretically, I'll do that if I didn't do the field experience. I did spend, by the way, almost a year plus in the fields, testing, commissioning. I remember we used to do cable shutdowns in the middle of the night. So we only our shifts are from 12 in the evening until like 6 o'clock in the morning, just to overcome, people where they're sleeping. So we don't have any disruption in the grid. And I enjoyed that. It was a nice experience.
Tell me about how engineering best practices are translated around the world. When it comes to the facilities that you're working on, are these, and I'm not saying the nuclear ones yet, I'm saying earlier in your career, are these still international projects where construction and engineering teams internationally come together, or is there a domestic industry that specializes in this as well?
Yeah. So on the higher side of voltage, which is the higher side of the grid, that's yes, you have international companies from Japan, Germany, US, and other parts of the world who work on the engineering, and also international contractors will come and do the job, because these are very specialized jobs when it comes to higher voltage of work. So I got that exposure, and I really enjoyed the early parts of my career. As I said, I remember we did testing of the commissioning on the power plants, not far away from the Barakah, the nuclear power plant. I remember we did that commissioning. It took us 6 weeks with the young German engineers who was working from Germany, came to Abu Dhabi and spend the time. Was good to learn from them, practical engineering. And also I was able to apply my theoretical knowledge from engineering. So it was a good match to learn and grow. And I'm very privileged to have that opportunity. And now I don't call an engineer until they've been to the fields. And yes. That's what they have to earn their scars on the back.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so as time went on, how did your role evolve? What types of projects did you start getting involved in that led all the way up to Barakah?
So initially I was given one of the remote projects, like in the middle of the desert, to go and do connection of some between villages of overhead lines and cabling and substations and all that. I was involved in the design part of it, the scoping of it, the tendering of it, the construction of it, and the testing commissioning, all the way to handover. So that gave me an exposure of being able to manage a project with a small team, also international contractors, and work with them in a very complex technical field. And being in the field, that was like the kind of a build-up of my career. Then I was shifting to given more challenging, more difficult jobs. I remember once we had to build 10 substations. This is distribution transmission substations across the Emirates of Abu Dhabi, 10 of them in one go. And I remember that company was contractor was Hyundai. And for the Koreans to come in the UAE and do a complex project, being involved to coordinate and manage and review engineering documents and all that. And it was a build-up of my career. And then I was given actually to run departments of water and electricity also projects. I was promoted to run that team. I was young at that time, and had 60 engineers reporting to me, and with the 2 departments, water and electricity. So I was responsible for roughly around 300 projects with a couple of billions to be spent and managed. So they became from project management, program management to portfolio management. So managing portfolio projects. And that was, my master degree kind of a specialty, when I really kind of apply that in the career.
How was that when you first had to take on a portfolio with hundreds of projects? How did you have to change as an individual in terms of how you thought about resources or risks, or how you even spend your own time and what you focus on?
I got interested on the generation side, and actually in the business development case side. I joined a company called Mubadala, one of the big investment companies here in the UAE. And there I joined them to develop business cases to build new power plants, gas plants, and other energy sources. And that got me a nice exposure in the private sector and the business development, the financial side. Then after that, I got a job at the federal government to come and run a utility with generation, transmission, distribution, revenue collection of around 250,000 customers. And that was also a big challenge for me, but that was part of the learning in that process. And that job, actually, that was in 2006. We were looking at the nuclear, not just specifically nuclear, we're looking at the energy mix and what can we do to diversify the energy mix for the country and create like a diversified portfolios of energy, running electricity based on gas, on renewable, and we are looking at nuclear. Is it possible? Is it worth kind of investing in? And now I'm in this chair. I've been running this job for almost 12 years, and we have our power plant operational, the first one.
Well, you skipped over a little part there.
Yes, go ahead.
I'd love to hear if you can take me back to the time. You already answered the question I was going to ask, which is how did you get exposed to nuclear? But can you now take me back to that moment where the country is actually considering and debating, and maybe give me both sides of the argument, and how was it decided that nuclear would become an essential part of the power mix?
Yeah. So we were actually technology agnostic. So we didn't have any technology specifically. So these are the economics. These are the terms from nuclear. We need something to be clean in the mix. We need something that is economically viable and will provide secure and reliable source of electricity for decades to come.
Yes.
And that's actually also, we've launched the renewable at that time. Renewable, the kilowatt hour cost was around 40 cents around that time. Now it's 1.6 cents, which is much cheaper than it used to be. Oil prices were around like $100 per barrel. So it was also in the higher side. And gas also, that was also an issue that we need to diversify and also increase. And the demand of electricity, by the way, on that time, I remember specifically because I used to run a federal government utility, which is deals with all kind of dynamics of energy prices and all that. So we didn't have enough capacities, and we needed to build more plants, and we had actually a double-digit electricity demand. And as of today, electricity demand continues to grow. And the plan was
that way in moving into the future as well. Is there more projected growth?
Actually, in the last decade, we had double digits, but now we have a single digit, but still high compared to other countries like Europe and US. Some places it's even minus when it comes to growth. Here, we are still growing. The demand of electricity is growing. And actually, if you look even globally, today, the electricity demand by 2050 will increase by 50%. And that's something we'll talk about maybe in a bit, but going to that moment when we selected the nuclear, we actually did a white paper on it, and actually it's available publicly online. Was published in 2008 April, talking about this is the electricity demand we need, and this is the thinking. If we build nuclear power plants, we are committed to the high standard of nuclear safety, security, non-proliferation, and that was all the fundamentals of our program. So how do we make electricity in a clean, safe, and reliable manner? And nuclear did meet all the checklists of that economics of it. And we decided to build 4 units.
It's amazing. And this must have been, I mean, is this the largest infrastructure project in your region? I mean, it's got to be one of the biggest, right?
In the UAE history, yes, this is the biggest industrial project that the government has ever taken.
Okay, so that shows something about people's confidence in you to have you run this. I mean, that's a pretty incredible honor.
Yes, I've enjoyed the journey, and today we are 3,000 people strong, by the way, in the program. So I'm not alone. So we have highly qualified nuclear women and men in the fields, and some of them are certified senior reactor operators who are running the plant as we speak right now, making the power plant run safely and 100% power.
It's an incredible success story, once again, not just for your country, but I think for the entire nuclear industry. You guys have proven something that kind of nuclear can get its momentum back. But were there times along the way in these last 12 years where you thought, maybe this project won't be able to finish? Was there any doubt at any point? Maybe even due to forces outside of your control?
No, we didn't have any doubts. I think the government support has been from the early days of the project. There was a clear policy issued in 2008, as I mentioned, and was published actually by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And we did follow it through in a very pragmatic, very systematic approach. And we had a lot of support from the international companies, countries. US also been as a partner in many parts of the business. We had laws was issued immediately after the policy paper, paving the way for the nuclear program. There was a law establishing the regulator and also enticing that it's illegal to enrich or reprocess uranium in the UAE. So all the commitments were done. We've signed, the government have signed the bilateral agreements with countries like the US, France, and other countries. The IAEA also been very instrumental in supporting us in developing the program. I remember the early days. I've attended a couple of workshops in the IAEA and what they call the milestone document for developing the nuclear program. Has like 19 areas we took that, we adopted it to our roadmap of the UAE, and we going back to my background, running projects, we did translate that to 1,000+ activities for the next 100 years, and we start putting project managers, and it take that discipline and rigor for us to develop our program.
That's amazing. Maybe, well, actually, I have two questions. First is, I want to hear from your perspective, what was the most difficult component of the whole project? Was it the government to government agreements? Was it the engineering? Was it the people management? What was the hardest part?
Mega projects has multifaceted challenges, and you have to program manage them, portfolio manage them, and project manage them on day-to-day basis. So these are a kind of putting it at a very high level answer. Specifically was the getting the talent and development of human capital talent. That was also challenging, and will continue for decades to come, because you need highly qualified, highly disciplined people who can work on those facilities. And we realized this from our lessons learned from other countries who developed their programs, and we were very advanced. We went and we checked whomever reached the excellence level. We took it, we learned from them, and we took it went up a notch from a standards here in the UAE. And I remember we developed something very theoretical, like a pipeline of people who will be put in. They spend a couple of years, they graduate from bachelor, then they go to master, then they go to PhD. And some of them will go from bachelor to tech, to even ahead of bachelor, they will go to technical school and be qualified as operators and local operators. I remember we were sitting in the room in 2009 and 10, imagining senior reactor operators graduating. That was my dream. And they are, we have tens of them now graduating, being given a license by the regulator. And I'm very proud to say one of the young, woman, female engineers, she took Unit 2 critical, and she is a certified shift manager at Barakah. So it's, I'm speaking about this, and there's butterflies in my stomach with this achievement. And if you ask me what is the ultimate achievement, this is the achievement, actually, than the steel and concrete at
building the human pipeline.
Yeah, and seeing them now with confidence and the nuclear safety culture and the rigor and three-way communication and the discipline that they have in them, it's amazing to see that happening.
Listen, everyone's in awe. Like, everyone is in awe of seeing these units come online. I mean, I joined the nuclear industry just 4 or 5 years ago, and I remember hearing, oh, they might get finished soon, but we're not sure. You never know until you turn them on. And just to see them come online is just, I mean, everyone around the world is cheering for your success, because it shows that it can be done. It can be done everywhere. So tell me more about the selection of the number of units, how many, why you chose 4 units, and the technology, and which country was to contribute which piece of the technology. How did you decide all that?
Okay, if I may, before I start that, also I'd like to maybe segue again on the human capital. So imagine the country doesn't have a nuclear capabilities or know-how and knowledge in how to manage nuclear projects. It needs a discipline rigor also. So I remember the first, that was in around early 2009, before even awarding the contract to the contractor. So I had my senior team. We hired a couple of nuclear experts from the US and other countries, but I wanted the Emirati guys, my colleagues, myself included, at least understand nuclear physics before we sign a contract, in this industry. And I do remember, where the best place to go is MIT. So we've spoken to MIT, and they've organized a course for us to go and join them. And we spent 3 weeks in Boston. It was in summertime. We enjoyed the weather. I thought Boston is always like that. Unfortunately, it's too cold in wintertime. And we've learned the nuclear physics, what's a K factor and how chain reaction starts, and how reactor works at the early days. So we are able to manage and lead with a technology that we understand. So we did spend that 3 weeks, and they're really, really worth it. And even the guys who hired later after that from the oil and gas and other industrial sectors, we made sure they at least spent 3 weeks understanding the equipment. But now we have guys with real degrees, of bachelor and master degrees in nuclear science. So maybe I'm the older generation in that workforce. Now back to your question, why did we select 4 units? We did the load demand management and what were the gap. The gap were around like 5 units plus to build with the double-digit growth we had planned. We had a plan by 2020. We reached 40 gigawatt, and now we are below that. But the 4 units today will suffice from a demand. side point of view. Why not? Why 4, not 2? By the way, and that's a very important question. For a new country, new nation to develop a nuclear program, and you need at least 4 units to satisfy enough revenue and cash flow to support the industry, R&D, human capital development, also the regulator fees and all that. So if we build 2, it will be an anemic program. Building 4 creates a very healthy program and also brings the kilowatt hour cost to a reasonable cost, and create enough industry that can be sustainable. We've seen countries who had less than 4, 2 units, and the program is difficult to sustain and it's difficult to manage. So we are very proud that we made the right choice. And again, we always learn from other people, other countries. For example, what's the firewall between the regulator and the utility? And you used to have one, and then that has to be completely separable, and they have complete. A regulator has to be independent and fully empowered and authorized. This is the case in the UAE now. The regulator in the UAE reports the highest authority in the government with no commercial interest. So that gives them the empowerment. That is something the US model is adopted, and other countries did not do that. So we've taken that and we implemented here in the UAE. So there's a lot I could talk to you about on what we've learned from others and best practices that we've managed to implement. One also advantage we have here in the UAE, we are used to bringing international companies and multicultural, make them work on one single site.
I want to hear project.
About that. Yeah. And we have great success. We've trained to run with multiculturals. I know as a young kid, we have in our neighborhood people from India, from all over the world. So it is how this is the DNA of the UAE. Our power plant, our company has 50 nationalities. Our country has over 200 nationalities in the UAE that living in peace and enjoying life and working to high standards and producing and very effective in the people in the country. So on that aspect, we are able to kind of adopt and adapt and excel, I would say, in many sectors. And also the leadership of the nation always pride the nation to be number one in whatever we do. And that's something we take to heart. And the nuclear industry actually takes to heart also, because the journey to excellence is an infinite journey, and we have to constantly keep improving and reinventing our procedure, people, processes, programs in a consistent and systematic manner.
And how did you choose the technology and the vendor?
So what we did also very pragmatic. We looked at who are the companies who have the performing power plants to the international standards. We looked who are the countries who are able to kind of meet the threshold, the cutoff line of they have the technology, they have the expertise, the operation, that it's also transferable to other country. And the bottom line, who delivered in the last 5 years or 10 years of experience. And that was very, very important. Another also very important factor we had is we needed a sister plant to whomever build a power plant in the UAE has to be built in another home of country, and then built in the UAE. And this is lessons learned from also projects were happening around that time. And that was something also a very wise decision we made to replicate and be able to adopt it to the UAE. Definitely temperature is different in the UAE and some other parameters.
Like the ultimate cooling, your final cooling loop is different, is what you're saying.
Definitely, yeah. You have to adopt. Also, frequency is different from the country of origin, 50 hertz and 60 hertz. And these can be
trickle down throughout the entire plant. Does that mean every motor has to be on a different frequency throughout the whole plant? Or is there somewhere that's an interface between the grid and the rest of the plant equipment?
We did the whole adoption of the power plant to adapt to, because you have components, equipment that you need from the market in the future. None even beside it's balance of a plant. You need some equipment that can be available and sourced regionally and locally. So what we did actually, I personally insisted, and that was also got accepted by my colleague engineers, that even if a window is there, don't move it around, because if you move a window, you move a pipe, you move a cable, you move a wall, and it's cascading effect. So these things we said, okay, if it's there, don't change it, but it's required because of the engineering requirements, because of temperature, weather, and most of it, and basic engineering requirements. We have to adopt it, and we've done it in a way that I would say we have a beautiful plant, very engineered, soundly engineered at Barakah, and as of today, running, very, very nicely.
So the lesson that I'm learning from this is that when it comes to reducing project risk, when copying off of a sister plant or a reference plant, the more important thing to hold constant is the physical configuration rather than the heat and mass balance or or your process variables. It's actually, you want to make sure that things are physically in the same place as they are, as they've already been built. Is that right?
Yeah. Whatever has been designed today has been designed over the last 40 years, and they've been optimized in a way to make this power plant safe and reliable and to the highest standards. And these are Gen 3 plus reactors, and they are very safe. And that's why we've managed to be able to replicate those reactors here in the UAE. Again, adapting them to the UAE environment, definitely. So that impacts the some of the cooling intake, cooling pumps, condensers. These were upgraded and upscaled to meet the temperature here in the UAE.
Yes. Tell me about the region as a whole. What makes your country special in that you were able to have the foresight to conceive this project 10 years ago and the discipline to hold through in such a steady and process-driven manner, and then also the success to see it turn on? Is there something about the UAE that it was perfect for you to become the leader in nuclear technology in the region?
So if I talk specifically on the UAE side, so the leadership is very visionary here in the country, and discipline of getting things done in a systematic approach is part of the DNA of the country. And also we had the big why we are building nuclear power plants, and that has been and will continue to be to make economical, safe, and reliable electricity. And that was the basic principles for building it. As I said earlier, we were technology agnostic. So, and that these principles never changed, and it will continue to be there. If you look today, as the gas prices are fluctuating, if you look at other commodities are fluctuating, if you look at nuclear power plants and you run the economics over 60 years, actually they run steady, and actually they also run against inflation. Sometimes the tariff over years even comes down because they're capital intensive. And when it comes to operation, is payroll and some maintenance jobs and all fuel costs, which is very, very small compared to the bigger investment. And this is something also we've realized and learned from the US plants and other plants. As long as you run them, well maintained and properly run, those assets will provide abundance of safe, clean, and reliable electricity.
What is the kilowatt hour price that you guys were targeting, and what did you hit now that you see the units come online?
Yeah, based on the financial model we've estimated, it was in 2008, 9, and 10. We are on budget, and that's something very proud to say compared to other projects. Our nuclear program also was delivered relatively on time. That's something also we are very, very proud of. So we've hit our marks, and I'm very happy to see that. And as you said, those power plant, these assets, once you switch them on, then you can realize the value for money. And we're meeting our IRR. I'm very happy to be in this and witnessing this, reality.
Amazing. And are there plans to build more now that you've achieved the milestone of actual operation? Does that mean that you can start having a conversation about the next 4 units?
If I can take you back 10 years ago, we were on this challenge, looking at this and it's a big job that we personally, myself, my team have taken. Seeing today, we've accomplished it. So I think the future is brighter. And now we're saying what's next, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But what's to your point specifically, those units now meet our baseload demand, and by 2025 we will achieve 25% electricity once we have the 4 reactors up and running. That will avoid us emitting, by the way, around 22 million tons of CO2 on an annual basis, by the way. And this is comparing it to 2014 car emissions. Now car emits less carbon. Will be around 3.2 million cars off the road, and we have around 3 million, roughly around 3 million of the UAE cars. So we are offsetting our transportation sector by annually by those 4 reactors. It's amazing. And actually, just put it also in perspective for the Emirates of Abu Dhabi itself. This is what reduce our carbon emissions per kilowatt gram almost 50% will be reduced by 2025.
And does the country already have electric vehicle transition plans in place? And will that increase the total demand of electricity in the country as well?
If I can take it, kind of I have my own theory as an electrical engineer, so I enjoy this. This is like kind of my, I have nothing to do, think about life, and this is what I think about. So electrification is happening, as I'm sure you are aware, and the electricity demand is growing dramatically globally. We have over like around 1 billion people don't have electricity today, and they need electricity, and they will definitely use electricity. If you talk about myself and yourself, on the last over 10 years, our electron consumption has been increased. You have, I think, a couple of the gadgets that you had now that you didn't have 10 years ago, multiple of them, and they are supercomputers. They consume our electricity. There is cloud computing happening. There is a lot of dependence now on digital world that we are living in, and that consumes a lot of electricity. There's a lot of industries also coming up that also needs more electricity, specifically, not just combustion engine, not just oil and gas. So there is demand, and there is increased electricity, and I do see the future as bright for the industry, and there is a future growth. One thing also, by the way, we did not think about, and we thought, by the way, you will see in our white paper, if you have the time to read it, it talks about the carbon credit down the road, or carbon. We were talking actually about carbon tax at that time, 2008. Today, the carbon credit is there, and green certificates are coming up. ESG is coming, and private sector, actually, they have the tools in hand now to buy green electricity. And one of the company that buys all our electricity, that signed our PPA, it put an auction a couple of months ago for our nuclear electricity and also renewable. And I was surprised. There's a lot of demand for it. And I was called some steel factory friends, the CEO of it calling me, says, how can I buy it? I don't sell it. You have to go to the Emirates Water and Electricity Company, and there's an auction. You could go and buy it from there. And they did buy it. Oil and gas company came and bought roughly 90% of our electricity.
What are the PPA prices that they're buying it for?
There's an auction per megawatt if you buy that megawatt, you get the carbon, you get the green certificates, and I don't have the price on me right now, but it has been done as an auction, and this is it's like beyond the tariff that it's paid. So it's and they are buying it as companies. They're buying it for opportunities. Now, if you see in the EU now put in nuclear as part of the green taxonomy. Companies, as they want to be part of the 2050 target of zero carbon, and that's something which is nuclear is one of the key enablers for that.
I want to still talk about future growth a little bit more. Okay, so we know that electricity is increasing, and now your neighbors can also see the success that you've had. Are people asking you to export electricity, maybe either to neighboring countries as well? Is that possible, that you could build extra plants even in your country and run wires throughout the region? Is that on the table?
Yeah, for example, today, to specifically to your question, the 4 units today, it's beats the UAE demand. However, the GCC grid, the Gulf countries grid, is interconnected. That was interconnected almost 8 years plus ago. And there's an exchange capacity between UAE and Saudi Arabia, and the region is around 1,000 plus megawatts.
Okay,
so there is room for exchange of power, but the challenge we have is all of us need electricity in summer, and we barely need it for winter time. So, but that opened the opportunity for export to Europe, and that's something that is Europe, and also you have the daily time.
And do your plants do load following at all, or no?
Currently, we build the units for base load, and that's what we need them for, actually, because the UAE grid. We have gas, and gas could switch on and off, which is very dynamic. And nuclear is coming as the base load. I wish we had hydro. It doesn't rain much here, but nuclear is giving us a base load of comparative to hydro plants.
Yep. I guess what I'm trying to explore is it just, to me, it's so rare and so wonderful to see a country execute on time, on budget, with gigawatt scale facilities. Because to me, this is part of the vision for what the whole world needs to do. So I'm trying to imagine all of the justifications that you could have to say, let's do 4 more units, then let's do 12 units, to just because your expertise is the most valuable resource, I think, that we have on the planet right now in the nuclear sector. So I want to see the engine keep turning and turning and turning, So it becomes easy, for other people to do it around the world by watching exactly what you do and seeing just how much the prices can decline with more and more units. So I guess I'll put it back on you. What would justify building out more units right now?
Yeah, mainly it's all subject to demand of electricity, and that's something which is once it's kind of evaluated, and that's the government already doing to evaluate the electricity demand and what are the economics moving forward. And as one of the producers of electricity myself, I want to build more, but that's something will depend on the electricity demand and the growth in the country's demand. And by the way, also one thing we've done, going back to the project management, program management, but by the way, the site we built, the basic infrastructure, intake, discharge, pipes under the ground, we designed them to take 3 to 4 more units at the same site at Barakah.
So at the same site?
Yeah, because we did the math.
Okay.
Yeah, we did the math. If we do the early infrastructure, we spend like, let's say $100 million and put these basic infrastructures, we will save almost $1 billion than doing it after commissioning unit 1, because once you put the pipeline underground, you cannot go and dig under them. You have to go around the site. So we did this basic investment. I do also thank the leadership and the government and the board of directors also to allow such kind of investment.
Very
being pragmatic and being.
It's going to look very smart in the future. Yeah.
Yep. I agree.
And that would also make it one of the biggest facilities in the world to produce electricity anywhere for all types of electricities. If you added more, it's already one of the biggest, right?
The 4 units, there is bigger site or similar sites.
But if you added 3 more, it might be the biggest, or no?
3, maybe 4. That's my. But looking at the current site we have right now and the current demand, is I think 4 is for the time being is good enough for us as a base load. And as I said, these are a great investment that will pay dividends for decade to come. And for having now the first one operational, the second one is been tested now. We did all the PAT testing, by the way, for unit 2, and a great success. We've also very happy with the progress with unit 2. One thing also we've learned, by the way, to your questions earlier, building 4 units, it gives you also that learning curve from unit 1 to 3 to 4. So
I'm sure it's only going to get easier from here on.
Yeah, no, and also even from costs of even manpower numbers, unit 3 and 4 were built by 50% less people compared to unit 1 and 2. The also number of equality.
Can I ask about that? Can we just dig on that a little bit more? The 50% of people that were not needed anymore, what roles were those? Where was the excess in the original projects that you were able to cut?
So actually, mainly it's construction labor. Before, we had to have many people do the same job. Once you do it once or twice, it becomes easier for the people who trained and do it in simple. Also, we've learned also new methods that I think we got some. We did it in the UAE, some cranes and some utilization of movement of material and some logistics. We've learned it from other projects that we've implemented at Barakah. Saved us a lot of money. One of them actually movement of sand, movement of dirt to backfill the site. So we managed to take the sand from the sea, de-dredged, and we utilized it to backfill certain areas of site because of the experience. We do a lot of dredging here in the region. That was applied. So there was a lot of tools and methodologies that we've utilized from our other industries to Barakah. And going back to lessons learned, it's typical. Once you learn from the first to the second to the third, you become much more qualified. Even with testing commissioning, I'm seeing now the unit 1, unit 2 is the team is hands-on, and they are much more knowledgeable compared to unit 1, and that's something we are very proud of. The young Emiratis who got involved in commissioning unit 1 and starting unit 1, they're becoming unit 2 a little bit more senior, much more hands-on, and much more engaged and learning, and that's something I'm very proud to see at Barakah.
Awesome. Shifting gears for a second, what about new technologies, specifically SMRs? It's funny to ask you this because you just had success on the big reactors, which I think we need thousands of the big reactors around the world. But there seems to also be a case for the small reactors, maybe putting them direct next to industry applications as well. Have you looked at this at all, either out of personal or professional curiosity?
Yes, we are all involved, and we are also following up with the industry of what's happening. So one thing also now we have the capabilities of assessing and looking at. We have the nuclear experts, we have the nuclear capabilities in the country, and that gives us the edge now to be able to evaluate and vet designs of different sizes. So we are involved, and we are looking at different technologies of reactors. Also, we are looking at the future of coupling it with hydrogen. There's a lot of opportunities and billions of dollars that now opens its door for us. 10 years ago, I don't think we will evaluate it and we'll study it, and theoretically we'll keep studying and evaluating it. Now we have the practical know-how and expertise. What does it take to get it done, and what does it take to be part of those successful stories? I myself I sit in a capacity advisory role to TerraPower, and I've been there over a couple of years now, and I'm also looking to they've started the ground kind of the bore drills in the west of the US, and they got the funding from the US. A first prototype will be built soon, hopefully, and that would be a good testimony of those small modular reactors can be built. And when they say small, I call them smart. They are 250 plus.
Yeah, those are big ones.
So,
what about much smaller ones? Have you looked at all at that? And also, what is the goal, like from your organization, as you look at new technologies? What is there a specific goal in mind? Is it for industrial application? Is it just for investment purposes? What is the goal?
Again, I would say what I said earlier. We are technology agnostic, so we are not in love with any designs today. And there is multiple design which is happening right now in the early stages of it. So we are reviewing, we are watching, we are looking what is the commercial viability, and that's something which is very important for these. And also what could be replicated and produced in mass and higher volume of production, because the more higher volume of production you do, the more that you could bring the cost down. And these now, the targets are all over the place. When it comes to target of capital cost, there's a lot of great ideas, and some of those reactors have fantastic ideas to be able to implement. And again, I personally, I've seen the TerraPower. I've visited even their labs to see that metal goes from liquid to solid, and also at room temperature from metal. It's amazing. I'm really, really proud to be involved in such kind of a projects. And we have young Emiratis who are doing their PhDs and master degrees. They're also being sprinkled over the world now, learning and studying and becoming experts in this field. So whenever is the right time, and we will definitely seize the moment of being part of this new industries.
And so since you're technology agnostic, let's put aside like the nuclear technology for a second. Are there characteristics of a power plant beside just low cost of electricity that if you were to say, here are your design criteria to a nuclear development company, what would those characteristics be that you think fill a need around the world, just giving your global vision?
Yeah. Number one would be the it can be built and the materials available when it comes to the current life we are in, and and a lot of good special alloys are there. Second is definitely be able to be replicated in a reliable manner. Another thing also, the export control or the safeguard as an important factor to have this for civilian purposes. So these would be my guidelines in terms of the cost of the kilowatt hour, that these make it commercially viable.
Excellent. And well, as we wrap up here today, I'd love to just kind of hear your vision for the future in general. Just take a global perspective and tell us, what's important, and given all of your experience and everything that you've learned about the energy sector and the nuclear sector, just give us your message to how people should just be thinking about energy in the future.
First of all, as I mentioned earlier, electrification will continue to grow, and that's generates a lot of opportunities for many sectors. Nuclear is one of them. Secondly, here in the UAE, we have now the power plants, the first two and two more to come in the operation. We are looking forward to companies to come here and set up shops in Abu Dhabi to be part of this industry and the operation and maintenance and improvement of sustainably running this power plant. So I invite all companies globally to come here to Abu Dhabi and join us. The nuclear industry is a small industry, and we want to be part of that industry, and we would like companies to come and set up shops here in Abu Dhabi. And lastly, the vision for the future, we've now put our like a roadmap also, like we did for the program 10 years ago. We did one for R&D to specifically operate and maintain our power plants to safely, securely, and high availability. And that team is working to enable us to do that, working with international labs in the US and other countries. And now also we're looking at other factors, this cross-pollination with other sectors like agriculture, healthcare, space, aerospace. These are other industries also I look forward to see grow here in the UAE. Opportunities in the healthcare is abundant when it comes to radiation management and radiation health. So the future has to be 10x maybe for us and grow this industry.
Mohamed Al Hammadi, thank you so much for joining us. This has been just amazing talking to you. I'll just wrap up again by saying what you guys have pulled off is incredible. It is an inspiration to the whole world, and actually, it shows the world that there is a nuclear path towards global decarbonization. So thank you again.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate your time, and it was a wonderful trip. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
And initiate at least a new approach to the many difficult problems that must be solved in both private and public conversation if the world is to take off the inertia imposed by fear and is to make positive progress toward peace.